This one was us getting aggressive with it, and the team that moved back makes sense. We had the Eagles moving out of their 22 spot to the 49ers, who moved up from 31, and they took Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle from Georgia, who is a Dane Brugler, who I work with at the Athletics, that calls him the most fascinating player in the draft, and I would agree with that. Is that he has only started 8 games in his college career. He is a 6'7", 340-pound offensive tackle. He has the most upside of just about any player in this draft, I would say, especially at the tackle position, where and that's saying something because there might be 8 offensive linemen going in the first round in this class. I mean, there's some real dudes. He is just he's the mountain that moves. And I just seeing with the 49ers, replacing Colt McKivitz, getting someone that with actual pedigree out there at tackle, and getting a potential Trent Williams succession plan down the road. You also have to pass the medicals. Of course, that's a big thing. The 49ers are a team that they're okay with kind of guys that don't have the greatest medicals. So which has been bitten them a couple times. It works out when it's all peaking, but it kind of bites them sometimes when it's not, as we see sometimes as the season goes along for them. But Mims is a true upside of a top 5 player, but it's just that you have to be comfortable with 8 games played at tackle, which is such a hard position to transition to in the NFL. But it's just that his skill set, and he's not a total project. Like, his eyes are pretty good. He's actually a little more polished than you would think with his background. But it's just that upside is just so tantalizing. And for a team like the 49ers, they usually don't get an opportunity to get a guy like that when they're picking at 31, or in this case, the 20. So just like that, like the succession plan possible, like the talent level, hey, let's just get the 49ers another adventure to kind of work with on that offense.
That you really sold this pick to me on the Trent Williams succession plan part of this, because Trent is such a unique, legitimate weapon. Like, when you talk about especially on a fantasy show, where the 49ers have so many weapons. They have George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and CMC and all these guys, Deebo Samuel. And then, by the way, one of their biggest weapons is how they truly weaponize Trent Williams in the run game. And that is going to be, whenever Trent Williams hangs it up, that is going to be a true legitimate loss for them. So getting a guy that has that succession plan potentially in place with Mims, I like that. But also, I think the fact that you said he has some immediate potential impact is important for a team like the 49ers that is clearly trying to win right now.
That's it. And a lot of these guys too, is that what you want to be, you try to give these teams the benefit of the doubt. They're like, oh, they're thinking about the near term and the long term. Some don't. Yeah. We'll see on draft time. It's hilarious. It happens every year. Some are great, and then you get to see all this. But it's, this is in my head, and again in my canon in this, I'm like, wow, the 49ers did a great job of really straddling the now and the future. They're doing a great job here. We'll see how it unfolds, of course. But an aggressive team, I could just see this making a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously forecasting trades is even more difficult when you're doing the mock draft stuff. I mean, but I like the thought process here. Again, building on what should be a strength, even though I think their offensive line is probably one of the weak points of their roster right now. They're building on the run game as a strength. And, I would guess that Mims probably doesn't fit the sort of prototype of a Shanahan offensive lineman, but the 49ers have strayed so far from that as a run unit anyways the last few years.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the Super Bowl pod, that how much that run game has evolved.
And they, because of that, Shanahan, or ideally, I think those old Broncos teams with his dad, and then also when he was with the Texans, he had so many light bodies and small bodies that guys would move. And I think when he was in Washington and then Atlanta, and then now, he's kind of gone about more like, hey, whoever gets it done, yeah, can you just execute this? They haven't really invested in it. They took Mike McGlinchey, of course, and he's been average at best. Mm-hmm. And of course, okay, so maybe that spooks him off even more, going like, screw that. Never taking another one of these guys in the first round. But it is a thing where I think you can find some cheaper guys, because he used to go get these 290-pound offensive linemen, so he can get these guys undrafted in round 5 and round 6. But does his philosophy change, going like, no, I just saw what happened in the Super Bowl. I just saw us when we had to drop back, and there's Brock Purdy, getting pressured as he's throwing the ball again. So maybe that is a learning experience for them. That's the thing. Sometimes these losses are catalysts for some, changing of philosophy and stuff. So again, this is all just fan fiction. But I could see it being possible though. That's why also too, it's so cool about the free agency and the draft. It's like you get to see what lessons these teams learned or didn't learn, or what they're thinking about their current rosters. So that's why it's always cool to see kind of like the puzzle pieces start plopping down.
Do you like doing post-draft or pre-draft analysis more on players? Like actually, do you like, in other words, do you like the fan fiction or the real projection afterwards?
That's a great question. I think post because then I'm very realist on all of that. And I think I like doing, but that's not to say I don't like doing the fan fiction.
Sure.
I like doing it like once.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, all right. Kind of like, who do I like with Brock Bowers? And then as I wrote about him and started thinking on it, it's like, oh, with McVay? Oh, hell yeah. And then I started going to that. Good. Don't have to think about it anymore. Maybe have one conversation about it. I was here when someone else has the thing. But yeah, I think that's where maybe I just like to hear myself talk on it. So we get that. But I do think the post one is where it's more real, also fantasy reasons, because then it's like, okay, then we can actually do like dynasty draft and stuff like that. Totally. So now I can actually execute plans and hopefully some people don't like some of the fits and some guys drop to me, so stuff like that. So I actually maybe think I would say final answer is the post draft stuff.
I'm also with you on post-draft. Even post-draft is a little bit fan fiction, and a great example is just, I'll get back on track here in a second, but just a great example is last year, Jackson Smith and Jigba gets drafted by the Seahawks. And
JSN was the first guy I thought of right when you said this, so that's so funny you say it. Okay, keep going.
Because, right, like, to me last year, he was clearly tiering to himself among the receiver group, and he wasn't like a top-tier prospect. Like, I'm going to have all the guys, the top 3 guys this year, graded, ranked, a tier above what I had JSN ranked last year. And I liked the other receivers in the class last year, but I just thought he was so clean, so easy to project. So he was in that group unto himself. Then you get he lands with the Seahawks, and people start writing this fan fiction about like, well, in a year they'll move on from Tyler Lockett and then he'll be the 2. And like, Shane Waldron, like he loved the slot receiver in the Rams. Like they're writing that fan fiction. And by the way, 1 year later, Tyler Lockett's still on the roster, and Shane Waldron is the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. So, and at the same time, like to me, when he was drafted behind those 2 guys, I'm like, I love this player, but like from a fantasy perspective, he's banged. Like because these other he's banged because these other 2 players are too good.
And Seattle plays with a bunch of tight ends all the time too. Yep. Like they'll flop him in and out. He's mostly a slot only guy, so that's personnel is gonna affect him. That's another thing why X's even in fantasy for fantasy reasons matter so much or get so many targets. They're on the field the most because when they get into heavier personnels, they're like the teams go, hey, we got 3 tight ends out there. Hey, CD. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're going to be the one receiver out there. Yeah. And we're going to throw you a target when we do it. So that's why slot only guys, it's like, they're going to get affected more by the other guys because they have to be in certain spots. That's why Christian Kirk, there's only so much upside to him because he has to be in a specific role. So if the offense wants to do one other thing, he's the one that has to take the bullet unless you're just a true superstar at it. That's so, no, I thought the same thing with Jason. It was funny. I was looking at one of my dynasty leagues and I was looking at last year's draft. I was like, could I have gotten Stroud if I did something right? And I looked, I was like, no, there's nothing I could have done. So, okay. And then I look and I see and JSN went 3 in one of my leagues.
Yeah.
And I remember even in the moment, I was like, man, he's going to be the number 3, number 4, maybe option in this offense. And that's this year and maybe 2 years. And I just even thought about that. I was like, it might work and help out the whole offense. But like you said, fantasy, it's not going to be a high usage role. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Cause like I watched him play last year. I'm like, he's fine.
He's fine. He's what fine. I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, he's fine. It's just the other 2. He's behind 2 legitimate difference makers, and even if he is a difference maker, it's just going to take some time, man. So that can be the big reveal that happens with post draft analysis. But we're still in the pre draft period. We have a damn month to go here. So give me your 4th team player fit that you really loved.